Hello and welcome everyone who's joining this session. My name is Catherine. I'm chairing this meeting. I'm a co-founder of Zaytoon, which is a social enterprise founded in order to support rural farming communities in Palestine to develop a market for their produce. Zaytoon grew out of our solidarity work with rural communities. We were there as international volunteers supporting farmers to reach their land and bring home their harvest safely. We continue to coordinate with other organizations to run tours and protective presence trips to those farming communities. I'm delighted to have 3 Palestinian speakers with me today, sharing different perspectives on the challenges of farming on an occupied land. Some of the challenges Palestinian farmers face are common to other farming communities around the world, and some are particular to Palestine. In common with all farmers, they have a deep and abiding love of their land. Much of rural Palestine is cultivated and managed by families who have farmed their land through generations, and their food and farming culture is very vibrant. Yet in the West Bank, around 500,000 people live in illegal settlements supported by the Israeli state, built on Palestinian land. Access to water, land, and infrastructure is restricted to Palestinians, and so farming is an act of creative resistance and an expression of an indigenous culture that is still rooted in its ancestral lands. As Vandana Shiva said yesterday, there is no separation between the rights of the earth and the rights of human beings. I'm delighted to introduce our first speaker, Doha Asous. She is a family farmer from the village of Burin near Nablus. She supports her family through farming olives and other crops. She hosts international volunteers who come each year to support her and her community to visit their lands in safety and harvest their olives in face of violent attacks by Israeli settlers. Her cooking is legendary, based on recipes handed down through generations, and she grows from seeds that are also handed down through generations of her family. Doha, marhaba, welcome. Can you tell us a little bit to start with about Burin, your community and your land?
Yes, peace be upon you and welcome to all of you. Thank you for participating. I am a Palestinian women farmer in Burin. It's a very old village, more than 2,000 years old. And this is proven by the way the water is managed. And we have old Roman buildings. Burin has been working in farming since very long, and we are strongly impacted by the Israeli occupation. Since the beginning of the previous century, we built schools in the village, but we kept farming. Before 1948, many of the inhabitants used to work in the Iraqi oil company that either in Haifa or in the rail track company. After the Nakba in 48, after the start of the occupation, a lot of them emigrated, ran away to the Gulf region to work to make a living. In 67, the situation worsened and more people emigrated because of the war.
Thank you, Doha. Can you tell us, how did you learn to farm? How long has your family tended your lands?
I learned farming since I was little. In 67, my father was killed by the Israelis. My mother was very young. We were 4 kids. The oldest was 7 years old, older than me by 1.5 years. And my mom had to work in the land to make us a living. And so our mother is actually the land. I remember my mother working the land to make us a living. I used to go with her to the land and see her working. And when she was resting, she had a little bit of food and we would eat together. And she would make money for us. So since I'm 6 years old, I started to work the land. And she would work for rich families, the ones who have money to pay us because we had no support otherwise. So I worked in the land since I was a kid. And I am very attached to it. All my land, most my land is in the land. When I'm at home, I feel suffocated. Even during the winter, if the weather is okay, I go to the land. Besides olives and citrus trees and almond trees, I plant vegetables and I save seeds. Since more than 50 years old, I have seeds and I save them and multiply them every year. I dry them in order to reproduce them. This can be for fava beans or hummus, chickpeas. I never buy seeds because the hybrid seeds, I don't believe in them. I believe in the traditional ones.
And you're not just a farmer, you're also a cook. Your meals are legendary amongst the international volunteers who come and stay with you. What is your favorite Palestinian dish to cook?
I like to cook, yes, indeed. From what I plant, from what I grow. When the volunteers come, I don't call them foreigners, I call them friends. During the winter, I have in the freezer from the vegetables, I do maklube with fava beans, green fava beans, and with other vegetables. I do a lot actually, and I cook. Maklube is very good. And I also do my own dough and then cook it on the wood. We plant wheat. We make our own flour, and so the bread is also from our own flour, from our own land. We have everything that is natural and healthy. We eat from what we grow.
Thank you. Can you tell me what the changes are in Bahrain in the last 10 or 20 years to the land and the community that you live with?
Well, there have been major changes. First of all, the settlers and the Israelis have seized control of large swaths of land, agricultural and non-cultivated land, which had a huge impact on farmers, on the Palestinians who live in the village. Um, we have many friends, many volunteer friends who called it a sandwiched village because to the north, south, and east, we're surrounded by 3 settlements. To the west, there is a camp, and also another one to the east. So we are surrounded all over by the settlements and the military camps, and even to uh, 2 days ago, we had an emergency in order to go to the hospitals, and they have locked all the exits. As for the agriculture, it has been hit hard. The settlers brought pigs that decimate the cultivated plants. So it is a challenge for us when we harvest our plants. They set fire to our yield. We are under their control socially and economically, and even a lot of people wait for the olive season because they wait for the revenues coming from the yields. And some wait for the money in order to furnish their homes. And some wait in order to get their sons or daughters married or to pay off a debt. And we have footage that support that last month, and I have shown that to friends coming to Burin. The settlers attacked me, and on the second day, they have cut down all the trees, all the olive trees. And that's only last month. So it has taken quite a toll on us, on our uh, uh, well-being. I spent a long time fearing that I might be attacked in the middle of the night, or I fear for my trees to be cut down. They keep threatening us, trying to kick us out, but at the end of the day, we are the right owners of the cause. And my grand my my nanny had a house that was 200 years old, and now and yes, even yesterday we have seen them taking control of many houses around us. They have seized control of most of the land, and 85% of the water is controlled by the settlers, and only 15% are supplied to us. And we struggle to have access to water to irrigate our land. This puts us as Palestinian farmers in a very hard position. Uh, these waters, these are God sent, and I have many times had my plants dried out. And I do not believe in these highly engineered vegetables. I plant all of these vegetables, but they have had a lot of negative influence on our economy and on our well-being as well.
Mm. Thank you, Doha. I'm so sorry to hear of the troubles that you and your fellow Berean farmers face. So farming is important both culturally, but also is a vital source of income for you. And I know you support your family's education through your farming. So it's a double loss. And I think, did you say that you had lost 30 trees that your grandfather had planted that were cut down by settlers recently? That must have been a hard blow.
Yes, of course, it was quite a shock. And I kept screaming. They have cut down over 200-year old trees, and to see it fell down like that, it broke my heart. And I have footage of me holding down the trees, just like a dear son or a dear daughter of mine, and even more precious than that. It is deeply painful for me. In 1 second, we just had a huge loss, and how could what harm have I done them? Because they know that they do not own the land, and they know that we are the right owners of the land and of the coast.
Can you speak a little about the joy that farming gives you? I've heard it described so often as an act of creative resistance to an occupation that has taken so much from you. Can you tell us a little bit about how you feel when you go out to farm your land, even in the winter?
Well, during winter, I look for uh, where the olive trees are not planted, and I start putting the seeds into the ground. I get a lot of joy out of cultivating, but then I have the same fear that once I plant the land, they will destroy the yield or cut down the trees, and they did that. They start cutting down or setting fire to the trees very close to the time of harvesting, and uh, and we hope that our economy would get better, and they cut down the trees 1 month before the harvest. It is deeply painful and frustrating. As for the vegetables, during the winter times, it it provides a solid revenues, but because we lack access to water and we cannot irrigate our plantations, we suffer a lot. The control the all sources of water, and even in Burin, at the mountain top, there were springs of water connected through the pipelines down to the village. So once they seize control of the mountain tops, they have used a substance like salt that cut off the water supplies. To dry up the supplies in order to deprive us of our water supplies, and this water is godsend. It's not theirs to cut off. And thank you.
Thank you for explaining that. So you farm with some native indigenous seeds that your family has saved, and obviously as climate change has taken hold, what value do you see in saving those seeds and using them? Are they more resilient than hybrid varieties? Have you had experience of using other seeds, and in particularly with water scarcity, how do your crops grow?
Yes, they're more climate resilient, and it's quality seeds. And I used to see these seeds with my grandmother, and I can feel how they resist disease compared to the new seeds. And they are more climate resilient as well. These are the main seeds, and I went to Italy to get seeds, and I would like very much to compare the seeds. And I went to Italy in September, and I brought along some of my own seeds.
Fantastic. Was that with slow food? Can you tell us a little bit about your involvement with your involvement with slow food and what slow food means to you?
Well, slow food is healthy, completely hormone and chemical free, because all of the disease that are running rampant nowadays could be traced back to the chemicals that speed up farming and the food production processes. These plants should have a longer time within the land so that they would be more healthy, they're natural. And I use fertilizers, and I use the animal waste as fertilizers. So that would be my naturally made fertilizers, having no impact or negative impact on the plants whatsoever.
Thank you. And I'm curious as to when you go and visit your lands, especially the olive trees that are far away from your house, do the military control your access to those lands? How does the permit system work for you? And can you visit those lands throughout the year, or is it only allowed at harvest time?
We would be given a permit for 1 or 2 days, although we might need 1 or 2 weeks. Last November, we were only given an access for 2 days, and we were attacked, and we found the trees cut down as well. So when we struggle, this is completely wrong. We are not allowed to go um, uh, except with a permit, and all I'm telling you is documented. I'm speaking with brutal honesty. We need a permit for that, and sometimes the military would be stationed there, and most of the servicemen treat us badly. And very rarely that you find someone of them who would treat us humanely. It's impossible for us to have access to the trees without a permit. And I have different plots of land that I can only access through a permit.
And I've been out to Bahrain during olive harvest season, and the whole community comes out. It takes many, many hands to harvest the olives from the trees, and it takes a week or two. So I know how important it is that you have access for the whole community to those lands, and how that's often very restricted by the military. Can you tell us a little bit more about the international volunteers and the role they play at harvest time to help you bring your olives home safely?
the international volunteers, I consider them as friends. They themselves are in danger, and they come help us when we are in danger. They come to help us, and they try to help us as much as possible. This year, I had 4 volunteers, and they were who were arrested. And they were threatened that their passport is confiscated. Even them are threatened. I started to worry for them, to be honest. In November, I sent my husband with them, and I kept one with me. And they were threatened. I understood a bit the Hebrew. They were threatened directly. If they don't leave, we will jail them. I have to say, I thank them because they come from their country to help us, to stand in solidarity with us. And they can come specifically to the places where there are difficulties, where there are aggressions from the settlers. We are all happy that they come, and we all wait for when they are coming. And all the friends in the village ask me, because they know that I'm hosting them. Everybody in the village is waiting for them and asks me regularly, so when are they coming next? The volunteers, all the volunteers that came, they were great, really. They are humane. They carry humanity in their hearts, and they can see with their own eyes the aggressions, and hopefully they will document that we don't speak empty words. They see with their own eyes what we are victim of, and we are really thankful that they are present.
Thank you, Doha. I know from my own experience and from speaking to other international volunteers that it's also life-changing for us. We benefit so much by being with you and your community in Palestine. It's really from the heart. Thank you for hosting us all for so many years. There'll be time for question and answer at the end, but there is just a question for you, Doha, from Phil. How can women like you support returning women farmers in neighboring countries like Syria? Is there any way you can contact those women, or is there any network?
To be honest, with respect to Syria, it's extremely difficult to be in contact because we are Palestinians. We have Palestinian passports, except online. I wish we could. I wish for them to come back to their lands and their farming practices. We are the same. We struggle the same struggle. We send each other pictures. There are some exchanges, communication, there is support. We strengthen each other. We share experiences. That's all what we can do.
Thank you, Doha. I'm going to turn to Taysir next. Doha, there'll probably be more questions at the end, so please stay with us. But next, I'd like to invite Taysir to speak. Taysir Arbasi, he has worked for decades in farming communities across Palestine and with the international organizations that support them. He works as Zaytoun's advocacy and liaison officer in Palestine, and he was instrumental in our early days when we first broached the idea of a fair trade partnership with agricultural cooperatives, and they now sell their products to us. So thank you for being here, Taysir. I'd love you to speak about the different community and initiatives that are pioneering regenerative agriculture across Palestine, because I know each region is different. And I know there are permaculture farms, seed saving initiatives, organic agriculture initiatives. Can you describe the way this has grown over the last 10 or 20 years?
Yeah, thank you, Cathi. Thanks for the organizers of Oxford Real Farming Conference for allowing us and giving us this opportunity to be with you today. Basically, we do not only agree, but also practically act around the fact, the reality that farming in Palestine is a creative resistant against eviction of the Palestinians from their land. Farming and seed saving, permaculture act for the saving of the environment. All of this is in favor of the farming community. All of this, it meets actually what needs to be done at the level of the community and the country. And this is why we have witnessed growth and the movements of seed banks, seed savings, and permaculture projects, and so on. One driver is our feeling that we don't have sovereignty over our food. And this is a big question for us. The sovereignty, it is, of course, some of you might know the situation perfectly here. So as long as we don't have this sovereignty, then we have to find ways and coping mechanisms in order to withstand the situation that we are living, which is basically the most affected people of it is the farmers, because the direct dependence on land, and because the target of the Israeli occupation is to annex and confiscate lands and to evict people from their lands and to expand settlements. So this is why such initiatives, referring to your question, Cathi, such initiatives and pioneering actually farming methods and so on is important and has grown over the past years. Even the movements of collective marketing of farmers produce, meaning that at that level of marketing of organic products, of vegetables, fruits, and so on, it faces obstacle, not natural but political obstacles, because the Israeli products of vegetables and fruits most time is flooding the market, Palestinian market, and in purpose, of course, for the purpose of reducing the chances of the farmers. And this automatically leads to the farmers have no way but only to abandon their lands. So these projects of also recycling of the resources that exist within the possible opportunities for the farmers in order to do with what we have. It became a practice. Do with what you have. Because whatever you think, it will clash with a huge barrier of the Israeli occupation, which is whether if you need to bring agricultural inputs at this level, agricultural inputs for your farm, you have to have certain permits, or you have to pay multiplied price for that. Such challenges are always present, and the farmers have to find their ways to keep up farming and sustaining their produce. So in the past 10, 15 years, I'd say, there is hope by growing and supporting these initiatives to keep, only if we're speaking about seed saving. Of course, as Doha mentioned, it's indigenous seeds that has been actually inherited over decades and still going, but also to preserve this and to keep it going. So there are even youth, I'd say small movements, youth groups who have initiated also such collective work together, only because we realize generation after generation, we realize that the Palestinian question is not going to end tomorrow, and we are realistic with that. So we have to be initiative. We have to have our own initiatives in order at least to peacefully sustain life. And this is one of the main elevators for growing healthy agriculture, whether organic and even environmentally friendly practices and so on. Farming for us is a way to stay and to resist.
Thank you. And it's important to mention that the Israeli state will, under the pretext of lands being abandoned, if land is untended for a certain amount of time, it will be confiscated, seized. So just to be on the land is an important act of resistance.
Definitely.
Go on, sorry.
Yeah, over to you.
We've seen ourselves that farmers, the farming communities have a relationship with NGOs and aid agencies that is supportive, but they're very keen to stand on their own 2 feet and to trade and be resilient through their own activities. Is this, can you speak a little about the relationship of NGOs to farming communities, and also about how international trade fits in the bigger picture, the growth of international trade in olive oil and dates, etc.?
Yes, certainly. So basically, the Palestinian civil society and the Palestinian people, before what's so-called Oslo Accord, we have been living as a society by the support, I mean, by people-to-people support. And then the civil society organizations has been established based on needs. Because we need this, we have to establish, to come together as a cooperative, for instance, or as a charity. We need to support certain people in need of certain thing. So the ground for the civil society organizations and non-governmental, it was not non-governmental because there was not a government to have non-government. So we've been under occupation for very long time, even before the Israeli occupation. And perhaps most of you know that we've been under Jordanian mandates, and then before British mandates and Ottoman mandates. So we have always to find our own ways to organize our society. So the civil society organizations in Palestine always been supportive to the Palestinians because it has grown, it has established from within for the needs of the people, not for desires of any other one. So, and this is why the direct support to the farmers was a key element in this, because farming and land is the only thing we have in this country. We are a rural country. We have some cities. Yes, true. We have history of a trade internationally. We have history of education inside Palestine and exporting education to the region. And this have been always under occupations. So the farmers that are now within the fair trade movement in Palestine, surely the movement of fair trade started not very far away, but also started for purpose of marketing the produce of the Palestinian farmers, like the olive oil and like the dates, like the za'atar, that is thymes and almonds and so on, the zaytun products that Zaytun does and connect with farmers in order to bring these products into the UK markets. The movement started in Palestine in the past 18 years, I'd say. And because the farmers put their efforts together and they have established themselves in groups, knowing that without collective work, we will never be able to reach the external market that requires certain standards, certain certificates, and so on. So this was the driver that the farmers have to do with their products, because it can't be always wasted in their homes while some families would be starving and they have these products. So here, this is, I believe, that the driver to connect to the fair trade movement and to be part of it and to present the farmer's voice and to tell the farmer story by the farmers themselves and to speak about the challenges they face and the efforts they put in order to protect their livelihood, the future of their children and their environment, and to fight the climate change that everyone witnesses the effect of it. So, and nowadays we can say that the Palestinian fair trade movement, that Mohammed Ruzzi, our colleague, will speak about it more, is achieving success.
Thank you,
Yes.
Taysir. Thank you very much. We have so much to learn from Palestinian farmers about steadfastness, resilience, and hope in the face of such challenge. There are a couple of questions coming through. I'll leave time for those at the end, but I want to turn now to Mohammed Ruzzi. Mohammed is manager of the Palestinian Fair Trade Association, which is a national union of 50 fair trade producing cooperatives, producers, and it's an exporter. He is a farmer and a beekeeper himself, and he's passionate and very knowledgeable about the role of organic and regenerative farming in supporting the environmental and economic resilience of the communities he supports. Marhaba, welcome, Mohammed. It's good to have you with us.
Hi, Cathi. Thank you. My pleasure to be part of this conference. And
Thank you for your
also
time.
many thanks to the organizers of the conference.
Could you tell us, we've only got about five to 10 minutes or so, but could you tell us a little bit about the Palestine Fair Trade Association and it's the support you offer to farmers in organic regenerative farming and training and in increasing their resilience, not only to the occupation, which is a major challenge, but also to climate change?
Okay, thank you. So Palestine Fair Trade Association, PFA, is a non-profit non-governmental organization established in Palestine in 2005 as a union for the Palestinian farmers who are interested and also ready to work under the fair trade standards or the fair trade umbrella. When we start in 2004, 2005, the situation was locally in Palestine at the economical level and political level was very bad. There was no marketing for our farmers' product locally, of course, and the farmers as individuals, they cannot access the international markets. So the idea to work with the farmers, let's say, to give them a chance to access the international market with this added value that the fair trade. At that time, the local price for the farmer's product was very low. For example, the 1 kilogram of olive oil was locally around 8 shekels, which is less than 2 pounds. And the fair price was paid for them, for the farmers from the FTA, was 18 shekels. And that was our starting, let's say, step. Now, year by year, more farmers join the system. We get the fair trade certification. And by the way, we were the first, let's say, legal body or let's say legal group get a fair trade certification from Fair Trade International for the olive oil in the world. And now, after let's say 16 or 17 years, we are working with more than 1,200 farmers or farming families in West Bank from Ramallah to Jenin. And every year we, let's say, export more than 800 metric tons of extra virgin olive oil to more than 19 countries. So this is, let's say, a brief introduction about our work. Also about our activities, let's say, or our programs. We have the fair trade program, we have the organic program, and also we have, let's say, the capacity building program. So we train the farmers, we teach the farmers how, let's say, to farming and producing under, let's say, special situation like Palestine. So our farmers, they are, let's say, suffering from occupation, but also they are in the same time suffering from the climate change. So always we are trying to say to find alternatives to help the farmers to be resilient to the climate change. The lack of water, for example, in Palestine, one of the most critical things for us, for our farmers, is the lack of water, the lack of rain. So now our farmers, let's say, trying to cultivate the land, or let's say plant the land with rain-fed crops. Of course, we have the olive and the almond, but also they need to plant vegetables, for example. So for this reason, we start since, let's say, a couple of years to train them for, let's say, the regenerative farming practices. So the regenerative farming practices, it's very important to let's say, to make a better, healthy soil, to increase or to improve the health of the soil, and also to improve the capacity of the soil to keep water. So, for example, our farmers now plant intercrops or cover crops between the olive trees, such as legumes. So these cover crops play a major role in, for example, nitrogen fixation, and also play a major role to reduce the evaporation of water during summer. So these practices, as I mentioned in the beginning, help the farmers to, let's say, reduce the use of water, reduce the need of water. During summer, of course, even the rain-fed crops need water. The olives need water. Scientifically, if you irrigate your olive trees in summer, the production will increase. And also, let's say, the gap between seasons, because let's say, in olive production, we have, let's say, a good year, then a low producing year, then a good year, and so on. So if we irrigate the trees, or let's say find alternatives to have a good moisture in the soil during summer, this will, let's say, reduce the gap between seasons.
Thank you, Mohammed. And I know a lot of the practices that belong within the sphere of regenerative farming are not new to Palestinian farmers. We were talking to a farmer last year who said that he watched his father and grandfather heap manure around the trees to conserve water and boost fertility, for example. So it seems there's a lot of ancestral indigenous knowledge that the Palestinians have held as well. Would you say that's true?
Yes, of course. By the way, let's say more than 90% of the regenerative farming practices, our farmers, they do it traditionally. So we just improve the knowledge. Or let's say, but sometimes we, as the FTA, we learn from the farmers. So the farmers do many practices, as you mentioned. Traditionally, they inherit these practices from their fathers and grandfathers, and they use it till now. But now we try to, let's say, make sure that all the farmers share these knowledge, share these practices.
Thank you. Yes. And I know there are different regions in Palestine that have different issues. There was a question that's come in from Kasturi. Kasturi says, farming in Gaza, as we know, is in dire straits due to the blockade. Are you able to communicate or support them in any way? I can say from the Zaytoun perspective that we used to import maftool, which is a kind of rolled wheat, giant couscous from Gaza, and we're unable to bring anything in from Gaza. But Mohammed, maybe you could speak to any Gazan contacts you have or any shared community knowledge.
To be honest, there is no cooperation between us as BFTA and any farmers from Gaza. We hope to have such cooperation between us in West Bank and our, let's say, our people in Gaza, but it's very difficult because everything controlled by the Israel. So even if we, let's say, need to export a product produced from farmers in Gaza, it's not easy to bring it from Gaza to West Bank and then from West Bank to outside Palestine because, you know, we don't have any kind of control in the border. So all the borders controlled by the Israelis. We, for example, we export through Israel because, as you know, it's controlled by them. So it's not easy to unfortunately to let's say to work with people in Gaza.
Could you describe the journey that the olive oil makes from the presses to the port, the number of checkpoints that it goes through, and the security that the lorries and the containers have to go
Yes.
through?
So let's say, of course, our farmers they deliver the final input, or let's say the olive oil to Canaan, our national park, to export the olive oil and make the boosting and the labeling. So a Palestinian car came to our company, to Canaan to trade engineering, to take the shipment, the olive oil. This Palestinian car go to the Israeli checkpoint. The Palestinian car, for example, we have a checkpoint about 5 minutes from our company called Al Jalami checkpoint. But because there is no scanner in Jalami, we need to go to travel to Tulkarem, which is around 1 hour from Jenin. So when we reach the Israeli checkpoint in Tulkarem, we call it a Taiba checkpoint, we organize with an Israeli car to came to the checkpoint, and we make a back-to-back transfer for the shipment. So from the Palestinian car to the Israeli car, because the Palestinian car cannot enter the checkpoint. So the Israeli car go to, let's say, enter the checkpoint, and they make the scanning, the security check, and blah, 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 everything. They make sure that everything goes to their, according to their regulations. And then the Israeli car, which mainly the driver is Palestinian, but living inside Israel, go to the port, for example, Haifa or Asqalan port. And also in the port, let's say, I remember a couple years ago, the product, let's say the olive oil container, on the label, it's mentioned that a product from Palestine, or a product from Palestine or in Palestine. So let's say an employee working in the board who was looking to the paper, the document for the shipment, he was angry because he said there is nothing called Palestine. So okay, there is nothing called according to you, but according to us, there is something. Of course, it's our country and it's a state of Palestine. He said no, there is something called Palestinian territories or West Bank. We need to change the label to Palestinian, let's say a product from Palestinian territory or a product from West Bank. But of course, we refuse, and at the end, we succeed. We succeed to go on and to export the shipment. So it's not easy. For
No.
example, if there is a checkpoint, when I say a checkpoint, it's a crossing point between West Bank and Israel. But on the way between Jenin, where we live or where our company located, and the crossing point between Jenin and Tulkarem, sometimes there is a checkpoint on the way, on the street. So for example, at any time, if they close the road, we need to find detours to go to the crossing point.
Thank you, Mohammed. I hate to bring you to a close because I know there is so much more to say, and my own experience of being in Palestine bears out everything you say. We are in the last minute of the call. I don't know if I've popped a couple of chats in the links in the chat. I don't know if that's come through. PalestineFairTrade.org is Mohammed's organization. Zaytoon.uk is our social enterprise. And if you look up the Recipe Hunters Doha Asous, there is a lovely film of Doha and her land. I'll see if I can pop it on the chat link now. Thank you very much to all of our speakers for taking time to join us today. I know you're all very busy with your work in Palestine. And thank you everybody for joining us in the conference call today. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.